Following a war that had left Britain damaged and in the process of rebuilding, the streets were crowded with bicycles, carts, and the occasional damaged lorry, all of which were straining to meet the needs of a nation in recovery. In the midst of this desolate setting, a little, unassuming van gradually started to establish itself in the center of British daily life and business. Often forgotten in the shadow of larger brands, the Morris Minor van had a secret that few people still recall. It was more than simply a workhorse. It represented tenacity, resourcefulness, and subdued resolve. Even its most devoted drivers might never have fully comprehended the contradictions and mysteries hidden below its endearingly modest facade. Why does the narrative of this small vehicle disappear from most post-war British histories, and what made it both a challenge and a victory for its creators? The story starts in 1953, when Morris Motors had to deal with a country in need of dependable commercial cars and reasonably priced transportation. Britain's industry struggled to modernize and satisfy the demands of small firms while rationing persisted. In this regard, the Morris Minor van became the answer to a straightforward but pressing problem. How could one create a car that was affordable, small, and able to transport heavy loads across a nation in recovery? It was built on the same basis as the famous Morris Minor saloon, a vehicle already adored for its dependability and usefulness. However, the van was a very different concept. Modified to support business rather than family life, there was a subtle beauty in the van's design. Its modest proportions and gentle contours initially indicated simplicity. However, the engineering was sophisticated underneath in ways that were frequently overlooked. It had an exceptionally smooth ride for a small commercial vehicle because of its independent front suspension, which it inherited from the Minor saloon. In contrast to many vans of the time, drivers found that the Morris Minor van could navigate rough rural roads and small, winding streets with a grace that belied its practical use. Compared to the larger vehicles that still dominated delivery, it was small but surprisingly capable, carrying up to 10 hundredweight, or half a ton, and using a lot less fuel. It was a victory to strike this balance between performance and efficiency, especially in a decade when petrol was costly and cars were required to withstand harsh circumstances. Despite its ingenuity, the Morris Minor van had unspoken drawbacks. Despite being perfect for maneuverability, its small size limited its payload and made long-distance heavy hauling unfeasible. For city deliveries, the engine, a small 918 cubic centimeters unit in the early models, was adequate, but it had trouble with heavy loads or steep inclines. Vulnerabilities in rust resistance were also discovered during early production. Several vans would corrode more quickly than their drivers had anticipated. These problems faced Morris Motors with a difficult balancing act. The van was affordable and adaptable, but it required careful upkeep, which frequently caught owners off guard. The van struck a profound chord with families and small business owners in spite of these difficulties. Delivering food, milk, tools, and a host of other necessities for daily life, it became a mainstay on the streets of towns and cities. For many, it was more than just a car. It was a trustworthy friend. There are many tales of farmers who relied on a minor van to transport livestock feed through small alleys, or bakers who relied on it for morning deliveries. Its existence provided comfort during uncertain times, a sign that even small resources could satisfy the needs of a rebounding economy. Beyond its practical use, the van had a long-lasting, subtle impact on post-war communities, rituals, and rhythms. Tea had an equally significant effect on Morris Motors. The company's reputation in the commercial vehicle sector was enhanced by the van's success, which showed that it could innovate and adapt under duress. It was a car that appealed to both desire and pragmatism, demonstrating the creativity of a business committed to restoring Britain's automotive standing. However, it was never marketed as a glamorous product. Instead, it was dependable, useful, and subtly impressive. Vehicles like the Morris Minor van, which combined innovative engineering with economy, were essential to the company's survival in the cutthroat 1950s. Without it, managing the logistical constraints of post-war Britain could have been considerably more difficult for many small businesses and craftsmen. Stories of endurance and dependability were among the van's defining moments. There were stories of vans that traveled hundreds of miles over difficult roads without breaking down, or about tiny enterprises that were able to weather economic volatility because of the van's reliable service. According to these stories, the van represents tenacity and resolve rather than just metal and mechanics. When bigger, more conspicuous vehicles would break down, it was a reliable car. However, it continued to be modest, its mythology based on calm, steady performance rather than spectacular. Over time, factors other than engineering dictated the Morris Minor van's destiny. Its usefulness steadily decreased due to the evolving market, growing demands for payload and comfort, and the arrival of more contemporary commercial vehicles. Many of the earlier examples were still claimed by Rust, but it became obsolete due to political and economic changes, such as the introduction of larger European vans. Production came to a stop in the early 1970s, leaving a significant but frequently overlooked legacy. The history of the van, which was once crucial to modest British businesses, has disappeared from the public's consciousness due to the rise of more ostentatious or potent cars that attracted attention but lacked the calm durability that characterized the minor van. However, the influence of the vehicle is still subtly felt in the recollections of those who experienced it. It symbolizes a period in British automotive history characterized by tenacity, inventiveness, and the meeting point of necessity and design. Historians praise its contribution to the reconstruction of industry, enthusiasts recognize its subtle engineering, and people who grew up seeing it on their town streets recall it as a trustworthy daily friend. The Morris Minor van serves as a reminder that excellence frequently lies in the modest and that legacy is built on thoughtful, dependable service that lasts long after manufacturing stops. One delivery at a time, it was a vehicle that silently propelled Britain into a period of recuperation. There is a feeling of contemplation and nostalgia for people who see the Morris Minor van nowadays. Because resources were limited and creativity was crucial, every detail mattered in an age where practical design met real-world needs, as evidenced by its curves and small frame. The way this van influenced the lives of people who relied on it and added to the larger narrative of British industry is its hidden reality, not just its strengths or weaknesses. It serves as a reminder that often the quietest cars leave the loudest legacy and is a monument to careful engineering, useful invention, and lasting cultural relevance. If you've ever been captivated by these underappreciated classics of British automotive history, you might want to subscribe to learn more about the remarkable people who depended on these vehicles and how they subtly altered the country.